This is meant to be a case study looking at how, in this case, a company, Navistar, which has a very long and illustrious history, much older than AOL, for example, and how it has been transformed over the years, but particularly the acceleration of transformation that Mathias has been charged with implementing at Navistar since it was fully acquired by Triton, I believe in 2021?
Correct.
Right. So we thought this would be an opportunity to look at how data, for example, can be used to inform what is, again, a really dramatic transformation of a company that has its roots, in 1831, I believe. So first of all, Mathias, tell us a little bit about what Navistar is and what your mission is today.
Yeah, well, very short. I'm sure quite many in the room don't know what Navistar is, but as you mentioned, founded 1831. I think, Gal, you said your company was born in the clouds. We were born in the Midwestern cornfields, agriculture, and it later became International Harvester, which in 20s, 30s in the US was the third biggest company in the US. Later became Navistar. And as you mentioned, 2021 was acquired by Triton, which is the commercial vehicle division within Volkswagen. So Triton is to 90% owned by Volkswagen. So today, big part of a huge multinational company. And well, I've been here since 2 years when the company was merged and acquired. And yes, there's a lot of transformation. The word has been mentioned by several. I mean, if I would just take three main streams, of course, is kind of the merge acquisitions as such, which puts a lot of, let's say, stress and pressure on culture and let's say, where we're heading. Secondly, the COVID and the post-COVID, which we'll talk a little bit about. But I think the most interesting here to talk about is really where commercial vehicles or the vehicle sector at all is when it comes to moving into connected electrical and autonomous vehicles, which is, again, what's happening now is more than has happened the past 100 years. And I will elaborate a little bit about that as we speak.
Right, because International Harvester obviously was well known for farm equipment, for example. But today, Navistar is in the business of trucking, defense products. What else?
Yeah, it's trucks, well,
buses.
class 6 to 8, and school buses. Market leader in school buses in North America and top 3 in commercial vehicles. Revenue about $13 billion and in the US about 15,000 employees.
Right. So, Rafi, how did IBM begin working with Navistar? And what's your mission when you work with Mathias and his team?
Thanks, Mark. So Mathias and I met about 2 years ago. As you can probably surmise, we both have accents, and as migrants to the US, we share a lot of experiences of what it means to get accustomed to living here. But the history of IBM and Navistar as two companies with extreme legacies goes back decades in various scopes, and I think the turning point was when Triton acquired Navistar. When Triton acquired Navistar, they needed a strategic partner to support the transformation. The scope we're doing starts with modernizing IT and making sure that Navistar improves the security and cyber posture it has, enhancing the connected truck platform, and driving efficiency and quality and taking cost out of shared services enterprise processes such as finance and procurement. But that's just the foundation. When it gets interesting is when we start talking about digital commerce, working together to define the experience of how exactly does a truck, EV truck, get charged, driving innovation on financial services, making sure that in a crazy supply chain environment, aftermarket parts inventory doesn't go off the wall. And this is before we even talk about the cool stuff of Gen AI and the other stuff. But if I have to surmise my role in our relationship with Navistar is we're just trying to keep pace with Mathias and run at his speed as he transforms the company.
Mathias, you mentioned, and Rafi just alluded to this. You took over in 2021. Suffice to say, the last 2 or 3 years have been a period of enormous instability, the lasting effects of COVID, geopolitical issues that have changed supply chains. I mean, while you're trying to turn around a company and position it for the future, where does technology fit in that journey? Why is technology, or I guess I should say, is technology the critical driver in the transformation?
Yeah, I think the words were mentioned before when opening the whole session about productivity and technology, or how that comes together. And as you're stating now, right? I mean, in these opportunities of this immense, let's say, turbulence and shifts that's going on, that's where opportunities also arise, right? I mean, coming in as called a new ownership from Volkswagen, acquiring this company that has this fantastic legacy and past, but going through quite difficulties and not having been able to invest enough in technology for a period of at least 10 years, put us in a situation where we really needed to, let's say, not only catch up, but try to get, let's say, ahead of our competitors. And that goes, it is technology that's the driver of this. And both when it comes to, again, it's very centric on, our industry is very product centric. And in a very short period of time, now we have to be extremely much more user centric. Ivo, you talked about your 100,000 retail spots. I don't know if that was North America or global, but nevertheless, those stores need to find, the goods need to get there. And you are connected to your end customers in all the way you're using data. How can we, as Pepsi is one of our big customers, how do we integrate better into your ecosystem with, let's say, availability of transport and all of that? That's how we need to move our, let's say, offering to the market and get away from, let's say, working on producing a truck and serve it when it breaks down. It's a holistic view of the whole value chain where we try to move, integrate forward into, let's say, into new profit pools. And if you then look, of course, this going on as the whole shakeout of the economy that's happening, supply chain and nearshoring. I mean, it all started, everybody could understand there were chip shortages and all of that 2 years ago, but when people now are waiting 1 year for the vehicle because the whole supply chain is still, call it 3 years after COVID breakout, still unbalanced. It's still the case.
Right.
It's still the case. And it's kind of the butterfly effect. I mean, how this moves down through the tier 1, 2, 3. In all of this, it's kind of unmanageable without another technology view, how we can get more into it also downstream as upstream, as I just mentioned. So in both aspects, I would say of handling today and let's say the move into the future, technology is the kit that brings this together. And in that sense, we've been working very much with IBM in both ways, how we can, let's say, improve our way into our supply chain, how we can, let's say also, we talk about labor shortage, talent acquisition, all of that. That are struggles that anybody can relate to, and how we can, let's say, go more lean and, let's say, tech into that. So that's been scoping also with IBM these last years.
Rafi, you're, as I said, the managing partner for the U.S. industrial market. You must see some similar challenges with other companies that you're working with. What would you say are the most kind of common challenges that companies are dealing with in the industrial sector at this moment in time?
Yeah, so I think Mathias, through his journey and the description he just shared, you have it all in there. Right. Asset-intensive companies, manufacturers, who need inputs of goods to deliver product to clients, are not only going through a transformation that reshapes their industry overall. So we talked about EV and autonomous vehicle and energy transition and the infrastructure related to that energy transition and B2B2C, plus the ability to drive digital products or hardware products with a software core. You have to add an environment that is extremely volatile and challenging across the board. So if you look at all aspects of creating value, there's inflation and access to capital is limited. Matthias talked about supply chain. So deglobalization drive trade limitations, both on the supply side and the demand side. If you talk about labor, there's a demographic challenge for manufacturers, and there's a skill gap. Regulations put significant aggressive timelines to drive toward a more sustainable future. And finally, we have new entrants that are born digital, that companies that were born in the 1800s need to transform to deal with. So you take the major shifts in the industry, you add to it the forces that operate in the economy that they have to contend with. Every one of my clients follow Matthias's lead and transform end-to-end, transform business model, operating model, and labor model. And the three components that are common, there are more than three, but those are the three that we see, all were mentioned by Matthias. The first one is you have to have a clearly defined purpose and a vision and rally the entire organization around it. Then the transformation agenda is a derivative of that purpose and that vision. And that's important because an elevated purpose is not just to be in vogue, but because industries are reshaping, the boundaries of those industries move. So if you elevate your purpose, you're no longer captive to those boundaries within the industry. So the second step is, like Matthias says, the importance of technology not only to address the necessities of the market shift, but also to de-risk the transformation. So if you think about products with a digital core that completely elevate and transform experience of clients and enable new ways to engage with them, which we'll talk about, then freeing up capital through more efficient processes, automation and machine learning, but also creating elasticity in investment, spend, and operating costs through things like the cloud. And Gen AI is not just for customer experience, but also for employee experience, bridging the skill gap, elevating their productivity, and addressing some of the challenges that stem from no more labor arbitrage when you do deglobalization. And finally, I would say on the technology side, it's also a deflationary force. It's a force that combats inflation because it's not subject to the same rules that most inputs that are within the inflation side. And the third component, which Matthias also talked about, is speed and efficient allocation of capital and resources is key. In order to do that, you cannot start from scratch. You have to look at a trusted technology partner or partners that can bring the foundational components on both the technology side and the expertise side. On top of those foundational components, Navistar and other clients build their own intellectual property and realize their vision. Now, I wish the world would be that simple because what's foundational and what's intellectual property is not clear. It's gray. So there is discussions between the companies and the partners. But there's no other way for companies with long legacy to actually catch up and try to do everything on their own.
Right. Well, I would imagine that it's one of the reasons Traton's acquisition of Navistar allows it to then access certain amounts of capital that are necessary for a legacy company to be able to compete and win. Because one of the most important parts of the transformation you're trying to implement, I believe, Matthias, please correct me, is the move to electrification.
Yep.
And more sustainable solutions in this market. And you are, I mean, that's an enormous focus of the company, right?
Yep.
And enormously resource intensive. So first of all, why do you believe that it's critical to the future of Navistar to move into this more sustainable model, a production model?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how are you using data to do it?
All right. This is very multidimensional, right? I think we start with the purpose thinking here, right? I mean, I'll come down to business in this, but our sector accounts for about 7% of the carbon emissions in the world on road transport. And so we can clearly say that we are part of the problem. We must bring a solution. Technology is there today to drive the solution. And we have just developed our last combustion engine. That's a statement. I mean,
Really?
it is for heavy commercial vehicles, right? And some past cars are setting some dates, but we've developed our last one. So again, our R&D efforts into, say, the future battery technology and all of that is way beyond 50% of the, let's say, of the budget, which for our group is about 20 billion euros the coming 5 years. That's for the Traton Group. If you add Volkswagen to that, it's about 200. So that the shift is going that direction. And when I came to United States 2 years ago, I would stay on stage and say it's coming in the United States, it's going to go fast, etc. And I was really crossing fingers and legs, hoping that I was right on this one, because it certainly didn't feel that way. Especially when kids would come home from school, it wasn't present there. You know, if you come from Europe, it's in society, it comes from the children. They ask you why you're doing this and that, etc. So you kind of change behaviors. Here, it came from somewhere else. It came very much from premium companies, PepsiCo again, one of them, and other leading companies starting to put this into their ESG, and to some extent now regulations coming up, EPA, CARB, greenhouse gas 3. So I used to say I don't really care where it comes from as long as it comes. So these targets set now regulatory and from the major companies, US, are in par or beyond what we today find in Europe. But add the most interesting part to this, I think it does make economical sense. Not today, to a large extent, but as time goes, where we see where battery technology is going. And if you today see, for example, people will say, well, you need a lot of energy and the batteries, etc. Sure, but there's new technology coming. It's a very intense use of the batteries. These vehicles, it's 150,000 miles, 120,000. So they're constantly charged and recharged, a huge utilization and a long lifespan, much longer than we could see 5 years ago. Today we see batteries have a lifespan of 10, 12 years without degenerating that much. And if you look on a high utilization of battery, that makes sense of business because the energy cost is lower over time than today. And just the last on this one is that truly also, I think for the US and for North America, this is where it's going to be important to be a powerhouse in the future. China's taking a very strong position there. Europe is investing. So IRA plus all the investments pouring into this, today being more than 30 battery plants in plan to be up and running in North America, is what we have today. So economy, the profit and planet part, which was very difficult to see 5 years ago, is here. Add to this technology data, a more efficient transport system. Again, the connected, the electrical autonomous. Where I talk about the electrical as revolutionary, it's not. The revolution comes with autonomous. This is a step change in this kind of coming 20 years, where autonomous, of course, is where everything comes together. The interconnected data, where this asset needs to work 24/7, how we integrate closer into our customers' ecosystem, and all of that needs to come together. And the only kit to put this together is data and how we're able to, let's say, go away from the traditional way of doing business and moving more into that.
Rafi, give us a couple of examples of how you've worked with Navistar on some specific projects. I'm sure many of which are still in process. Do you ever reach the finish line on something? But what are some examples of how you're working with a major company like Navistar to help the CEO in this case and his team create this, bring to fruition the vision that he's just outlined?
As always, I love the clarity that Mathias articulates what he's looking for. And all we need to do is to pull on that thread of what he said. Navistar has now probably over 500,000 trucks with data, connected data on our roads, and that number increases exponentially every time trucks get sold. That data is Navistar's competitive advantage, and harnessing that data can have tremendous benefits across the board. So one aspect we're engaged with is to drive an experience for all constituents across the Navistar chain. I'm talking about the sell-to chain, the dealer, the fleet owner, the owner-operator, that is specific to them to interact with this data and drive a better outcome for them. Now, This can be, if you think about it, on a persona-based application. Every one of those constituents has needs. Every one of those constituents need to be walked through the journey of change management from combustion engine to EV to autonomous. How do you use the data to educate every one of the constituents that what Mathias has in his vision, that profit and planet are not opposed in each other, everybody can make money and actually do good, is something that we are very busy with. I won't talk specifically what we're doing at Navistar, but at a Japanese OEM, we're using our install base of 2 million people and educate them around what they fear about for changing to EV, the range, the network of charging, et cetera. So we walk them through using real data that they're familiar with on the benefits of driving the evolution of the product and the experience it provides. The data for every one of those constituents also allows something else, which is completely redefining the engagement model that Navistar has with its customers. So today it's a transaction, right? We buy, we lease a truck. But Mathias's vision from the first time he spoke publicly in the US is that we need to align the metrics of the OEM with what customers value most. And it started with uptime. And then there's capacity, and then there's distance. So can we use the data we collect to then engage in a new way with customers? And obviously this is a complex thing, and Mathias will decide when and if he wants to introduce that to the marketplace. But the data can form the hypothesis on how that looks like. The second thing, that data is also taken, of course, to manufacturing and engineering to provide better products and inform which features to bring online first, et cetera. It also enables a more efficient configuration and fulfillment process to the clients. It also enables better quality control because you can build a digital twin that can simulate a lot of real-life situations. The other part of it is Gen AI. So when Mathias and I talked, I don't know how long ago that was, maybe 6, 8 months ago when this thing was a major hype. Mathias was very clear. I want practical use cases and an iterative experimental process, what in software we call agile, to introduce Gen AI cases that actually add value and are not just there to be sexy. So we went through multiple workshops in which we started together, and then Mathias talked to his leadership team on what Gen AI use cases he is going to deploy within his company. And I'm going to mention one that is maybe medium term. Gen AI is an opportunity to redefine the relationship between person and truck. So the person engages with the truck, talks to the truck. And it can be an operating talk to his or her truck, or a fleet owner that talks to their fleet. The idea is to share intent, get coaching, and the combination of Gen AI and regular machine learning on time series provide an optimization that elevates the experience and then serves the vision and the strategy of uptime, capacity, distance, et cetera. So there's a lot of cool things that are going on.
We've actually run out of time, but I did actually, in listening to you, Mathias and Rafi, talk about all of this change, besides being exhausted by the thought of everything that you're trying to do, I did wonder if you know, for other CEOs and business leaders here in the audience or watching, like, do you have any advice for them on as they deal with this kind of transformation? Because almost every company is going through something like this.
We spoke the other day, you said if I could give advice, and I'm not in a position to give advice. The only thing I could do is maybe share some learning, a thought I have. I mean, is really when engaging with the teams about this, right? I mean, it's been so important for me to talk about the what we need to do and why we need to do it. Really get people on board on this, and always short in communicating. I mean, that's always going to be it. As much as you communicate, you always fall short. So go beyond what you think is possible and communicate about it. And the how is really so important to make the teams do it themselves. I mean, stay out of there. I'm not, I mean, I've heard so much things today that I'm not anywhere an expert at, and there's so good people around. And I must say, especially the young generation coming in around these areas. So let them bloom, give let's say, this space for them, and allow a lot of mistakes and learnings around the journey and kind of bring those up. And that's so non-traditional for a company like ours, where engineering has a start, mid, end of a project. Even if it's 7 years away, you know what you're developing towards and what it will be looking like. Today, it's upside down.
Right.
So I would just go that way. I mean,
Well, thank you both.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you.